can make a way. Hey, hey, so humble yourselves and pray and guard his Torah. Obey each day. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Hoshiana, Hoshiana. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Shabbat shalom, everybody. Shabbat shalom, Joey. Was it cold last night or what? How cold was it in Alabama last night? Well, that's pretty bad if it's cold in Alabama. 24. All right, we got down to 16, didn't we? All right, I know there's some people on here from Montana, and we got somebody in Alaska. Don't snub your nose at us. And 16 in Georgia, it's cold. Did anybody experience any kind of adversity last night due to the cold? Yeah, we had a frozen pipe. Yeah, you did too? It was my fault. Whenever I went to go turn on the faucet at the kitchen faucet, I only turned the hot water side on and not the cold water side. And we got a little bitty hose bib that's on the other side of the wall right there, and apparently it froze on the outside and stopped it up. But it's not a big deal. All we took was some hot water out there, and it opened right back up. But still, that could have turned into something big in a hurry, couldn't it? Yeah. So how many of you like dealing with adversity? Raise your hand. Really? You don't? Yeah, me either. I'm going to put my hand back down. Well, today I want to talk about adversity and then go through some different things about it and see if we can learn anything about it. Are y'all good with that? All right, so to begin with, I had to start with learning what the definitions of adversity are, because anytime I'm looking at something, I want to make sure that I got the right mentality as I'm going into it. And so I turned to the internet to be able to figure out what kinds of definitions I could get. And what I found is no dictionary I looked at had the same thing. There was a broad spectrum of what adversity could actually mean. So I went ahead and got 5 different ones down here for you to look at, but it's similar but still different all the way around. So definition number 1 of adversity: a difficult and y'all, they're going to use this a whole lot. They like to attribute it to luck and misfortune and things like that. We don't believe in that, but it's just what they use. So I apologize for it. That's what they're going to have. A difficult or unlucky situation or event. So something that I noticed about that definition is that seems to be a singular time. You know, this was an event that happened that was a difficult time. So that's one way to look at adversity. By the way, adversity is a noun, so it's always used in a noun setting. The definition number 2, a state or instance of serious or continued difficulty or misfortune. So that's something that seems like it's ongoing. It can go for a long time as opposed to the singular point of it happening. Adverse or unfavorable fortune or fate, a condition marked by misfortune, calamity, or distress. I wanted that one on there because they use the words calamity and distress. That gives us a little bit more of a guise to look for as we're trying to figure out what adversity is. And then number 4 is an adverse or unfortunate event or circumstance. And so what that kind of sounded like is that had to do with a circumstance that was happening. So the adversity associated with the plague. So that was adversity with the plague. So those were all the different circumstances associated with that one time. Does that make sense? All right, and then the last one was just simple difficulties. As we can see from the definition, adversity comes in all shapes and sizes and durations. And it's often hard to figure out what to do when we're going through adversity. Would y'all agree? Yeah. All right. So today I'd like to talk about that while comparing and contrasting 2 biblical stories where adversity seems to be a theme. So today we're going to start out, and truthfully we're going to stay in Genesis for most of the day, but we're going to start with Yaakov. So if y'all don't mind, let's go on and turn to Genesis 27.
Sorry, I missed that. Could you say it again, please?
Genesis 27. Bereshit 27. All right, and so I'm actually going to do this one just a little bit different than I normally do it. We're going to cover a lot of ground, so I'm going to spend a couple of verses here, jump down in the same chapter, and keep going. So y'all stick with me as we go through, because we're going to hit a lot of the story as we're going through, but we're going to leave out some of the parts that are just like where it jumps over to another thing or something along those lines. So Yaakov is a great story to look at when it comes to adversity. And truthfully, I believe his adversity starts in 27 but begins in 41. So what's happening in chapter 27 is Yaakov has just went in to his daddy. He went in there to Yitzhak and he pretended to be his brother Esau. And as he was being his brother Esau, some things happened that weren't so great. He was able, well, it was good for him, but it wasn't good for the circumstance. He was able to get the blessing that was supposed to go to Esau as being the firstborn, and he ran out with it. And shortly thereafter, Esau shows up and comes in and says, "Daddy, what'd you do? Give me a blessing too." But as Esau comes walking out, he starts assuring himself and starts comforting himself in something that's not so good for Esau. Let's check that out. It's going to be in verse 41. That's on page 28, by the way, in the ISR Scriptures in the 98 version. 27:41. And Esau hated Yaakov because of the blessing with which his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, "The days of mourning for my father draw near. Then I'm going to kill my brother Yaakov." And he did that because, keep going on, verse 42, and the words of Esau, her older son, were reported to Rivkah. And she went and called Yaakov, her younger son, and said to him, "See, your brother Esau comforts himself concerning you, to kill you." Now listen to that. He comforts himself about he's about to kill him. How do you think that can make your twin brother feel, that you know that your brother's got it out for you so bad that he's comforting himself about killing you? Could that be an adverse situation? Can you imagine the turmoil that would all of a sudden well up inside of you if that were the case? I can't. I mean, like, that's horrible. Keep going. "And now, my son, listen to my voice. Rise, flee to my brother Laban in Haran, and stay there with him a few days, until your brother's wrath turns away, until your brother's displeasure turns away from you, and he forgets what you have done to him. And I shall send and bring you from there. Why should I be bereaved of you both?" Now, Yaakov winds up taking off after this, and he's got to go on this long trip by himself. He's leaving everybody that he knows. He's got his mom, his daddy, his brother, any friends that he may or may not have had living in this situation. He's got to leave all that and literally flee. Can you imagine what kinds of emotions would be welling up inside of him now? Not only I've just heard that my brother comforts himself in killing me, but now I got to leave everything that I know and go running out here by myself through all kinds of different country to be able to get with some people that I don't even really know. Does that sound like adversity? Does that sound like it's going to be an instance, or does that sound like it might be prolonged? It might be prolonged, all right? I wonder what kind of things were going through his mind. Do you think he had any doubt there? Man, I don't even know why we did that. What in the world? Do you think he had any fear? Not only fear, hey, my brother's going to kill me, but what could happen to me while I'm out here? Somebody's going to attack me while I'm out here. You know, when he gets into a resting place here shortly, he goes and he puts a rock at his head. And I don't know exactly what that means, but it almost sounds like he was closing himself up in a little crevice and he wanted to make sure nothing could get in and get after him. So this is a pretty serious situation with a lot of distress and calamity. Would you agree? All right. But something happens as Yaakov gets up to this resting place, and it's something that I think we ought to pay attention to. So we're going to get on over into chapter 28, and we're going to start in verse 10. Verse 10. "And Yaakov went out from Beersheba and went towards Haran. And he came upon a place and stopped over for the night, for the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of that place, and he put it at his head, and he lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed, and he saw a ladder set up on the earth, and its tops reached to the heavens, and saw messengers of Elohim going up and coming down. And see, Yahweh stood above it and said, I am Yahweh, Elohim of Abraham, your father, and the Elohim of Yitzhak. The land on which you are lying, I give it to you and your seed. And your seed shall be as the dust of the earth. And you shall break forth to the west and to the east, and to the north and to the south. And all the clans of the earth shall be blessed in you and in your seed." Can y'all imagine that being told to you by the creator of the heavens? I mean, wow. "And see, I am with you and shall guard you wherever you go, and shall bring you back to this land. For I'm not going to leave you until I have done what I have spoken to you." I'm not going to leave you until I've done what I've spoken to you. Y'all, we just went from I'm scared to death to all of a sudden I'm sitting in this little place by myself, and Yahweh Elohim himself comes and visits you and tells you, don't be afraid, I'm with you. I'm going to do these miraculous things to you, and I'm not going to leave you until I get through with you. What do you think that would do to your heart? strengthen it, wouldn't it? Warm it greatly. It would be one of those things that you wouldn't even know how to process exactly. You'd be sitting there thinking, wow. But by the same token, wouldn't you be humbled with it? It would be reassuring, humbling, scary, all of it at the same time. And I think Yaakov goes on to say that here in just a second. And Yaakov awoke from his sleep and said, truly, Yahweh is in this place, and I did not know it. It's so impressive, by the way, that he decides he's going to make a vow. But he was afraid, and he said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of Elohim, and this is the gate of the heavens. And Yaakov rose early in the morning, and he took the stone that he had put at his head and set it up as a standing column, and he poured oil on top of it. And he called the name of that place Beth El, which means house of Elohim. However, the name of that city had been Luz previously. And Yaakov made a vow, saying, seeing Elohim is with me, so he's acknowledging it, and has kept me in this way that I'm going, so he automatically acknowledges right there that this is from Yahweh, and has given me bread to eat and garments to put on. When I have returned to my father's house in peace, and Yahweh has been my Elohim, then this stone which I have set as a standing column shall be Elohim's house. And of all that you give me, I shall certainly give 1/10 to you. He makes that vow. He was able to see all that and acknowledge all that. You would think that his adversity would be kind of tainted now because he doesn't have to deal with all that stuff because Yahweh just reassured him in person. That's a big deal, wouldn't you say? All right. So Yaakov keeps going. He makes it all the way to the people of the east. And he finds out he's finally in the right place. And this is an emotional thing for him because he starts doing some really strange things. He gets overcome with emotion. And let's jump over to 29:10. I don't even think you got to flip the page. Yeah, you do. And it came to be when Yaakov saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, that Yaakov went near, and he rolled the stone from the well's mouth. And he watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Now, the reason why that's strange is because that wasn't his job to do, nor had he been given permission to do that. Because they just said, hey, we got to wait until it's the time. And he saw her, and he said, oh, and he went ahead and did it. Then he did something even else that's strange. He walked up and he kissed a girl, and he started crying on her. Verse 11, and Yaakov kissed Rachel and lifted up his voice and wept. Now, can y'all imagine what's going on in Rachel's mind at this point in time? It's like, dude, what just happened? Who is this guy? He's done grabbed a hold of me. But he composed himself just a little bit, and he said, and when Yaakov told Rachel that he was his father's relative and that he was Rivka's son, she took off running. She said, I'm getting out of here. This guy's crazy. But it wasn't what it was. He was literally overcome with emotion. And so he'd been going on this long distance. He's starting to realize that the promise that Yahweh was giving him was coming to fruition. All right? This seems like some irrational things that he was doing, but it's obvious things are getting better. Laban goes ahead and puts into work, and he agrees to give Rachel to him as wife. Let's drop down to 18. And Yaakov loved Rachel. So he said, let me serve you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter. And Laban said, it's better that I give her to you than I should give her to another man. Stay with me. So Yaakov served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of the love that he had for her. That's some really big love. I mean, for that 7 days to go flying by like that. Everything's looking great. All that stuff he'd had in the past was gone. But adversity strikes. Verse 23. And it came to be in the evening that he being Laban, took Leah, his daughter, and brought her to Yaakov, and he went into her. And Laban gave his female servant Zilpah to his daughter, Leah as female servant. And in the morning it came to be that, see, it was Leah. So he said to Laban, what have you done to me? Was it not for Rachel that I served you? Why then have you done this to me? I don't know if y'all know this or not, but this led to the great baby wars of early BC. Y'all remember how that happened? Now, we're talking about adversity, how it could be a point or it could be a lot of circumstances. I think there was a lot of circumstances in this. If you don't believe me, think about what Yaakov was dealing with in chapter 30, verse 1. And when Rachel saw that she bore Yaakov no children, Rachel envied her sister and said to Yaakov, give me children or else I'm going to die. Man, they say if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. Could you imagine the calamity Yaakov could be facing during this time? He's got 4 mamas to contend with and make sure everybody's happy or else ain't nobody happy. Here's another for instance of people not being happy. Let's drop down to 30:15. But she said to her, is it a small matter that you've taken my husband? This is the kind of yeah that's going on all the time. Would you take my son's love apples too? It's gone from my husband to anything that I have at all. And Raquel said, fine, let him lay with you tonight then for your son's love apples. So this was the great baby wars that went back and forth and all the calamity that was going on in Yaakov's house. And this is important to see that adversity can strike in multiple places. It can hit your health. It can hit your house, like the emotional well-being of the inside of your house. It can also hit your economics, which we're about to see. Things prevailed for Yaakov, but then trouble started at the workplace. Let's get into verse 26. Let me take a drink real quick. All right, verse 26. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you. This is Yaakov speaking to Laban. And let me go. For you yourself know my service which with I have done for you. And Laban said to him, if I found favor in your eyes, please stay, for I have diligently watched that Yahweh has blessed me for your sake. And he said, name me your wages, and I'll give it to you. This is good. This is really good. Work's getting better. Hey, I'm about to take a raise. And he said to him, you know how I have served you, and how your livestock has been with me. For the little you had before I came increased greatly, and Yahweh has blessed you since my coming. But now, when am I to provide for my house too? And he said, what do I give you? And Yaakov said, give me naught. If you do this for me, I shall again feed and guard your flocks. Let me pass through all the flocks today, removing from them all the speckled and spotted sheep, and all the black ones among the lambs, and the spotted and speckled among the goats. And these shall be my wages. And my righteousness shall answer for me in the time to come, when you come concerning my wages. Every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats, and black among the lambs, it is stolen if it is with me. And Laban said, see, let it be according to your word. And on that day he set aside the male goats and that were speckled and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had some white in it, and all the black ones among the lambs, and gave them into the hand of his sons. It's good, right? And then Genesis 31:1. And he, this is Yaakov, heard the words of Laban's son, saying, Yaakov has taken away all that was our father's, and for what belongs to our father he has made all his wealth. That ain't good. All right, I don't know how many sons they had, but right now it's Yaakov and his little clan versus all that other clan. And they're like, man, he's done took all our father's stuff. Can you imagine what kinds of things might be going on in Yaakov's mind now? He might be thinking civil war. He might be thinking, hey, they're just going to steal from it. I don't know what's going on. But here's an opportunity for adversity to strike his pocketbook. Verse 2, and Yaakov would look at the face of Laban, this is his boss, his father-in-law, and see that it was not towards him as before. As he's sitting there worrying about this whole situation, and we are going to see that he was worrying about that, Yahweh did something again. He came down and he talked to him again. And I find this very marvelous because Yahweh's come down and talked to him a second time right here and there. Right here and there. Right now. All right, verse 3. And Yahweh said to Yaakov, return to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I am with you. Now, I think he's put that part in there because he wanted to remind him of what he'd been told back when he was standing in that standing column. And that thing that Yaakov had acknowledged that Yahweh was going to be with him and take him through everything. So don't worry about it, right? The next thing he does appears to be quite fear-based. We're going to jump down to verse 20. And Yaakov deceived Laban the Aramean because he did not inform him that he was about to flee. Now, when you just leave, is that considered fleeing? No, it's not. When you flee, you get the heck out of there because you're worried about something, right? You skid them tires. I don't know what you do on a goat, but you get them out there. So he's going in a big hurry, right? Now, is that something that you do when everything's good, you always prosper in your path? Not unless he told you to, but he didn't tell him. He just said, go on back, you're all right, I'm with you. All right, verse 21. And he fled with all that he had. That's the second time they used the word fled and flee. And he rose up and passed over the river and headed towards the mountains of Gilead. And on the third day, Laban caught wind of it, and he said, man, Yaakov's done fled. I'm after him. Jump down to 27. Yaakov and Laban winds up overtaking Yaakov in the mountains, and he comes up to confront him. Verse 27. Why did you flee secretly? So he obviously didn't tell Laban he was about to leave. That sounds scared. And deceive me, and did not inform me, and I would have sent you away with joy and songs, with tambourines and lyre, and you did not allow me to kiss my sons and my daughters. Now you have been foolish to do this. I agree with Laban right here, because Yahweh had just said, I'm going to prosper you in all your ways. I'm reading this right here. There's been quite a few years, like 20 or so, that has passed since this has happened. But Yahweh just came back and said, I'm with you. Why is this fear creeping in here? If he'd have just walked up and said, hey man, I'm ready to go back home. Laban was apparently ready to be done with him because he wanted his wealth back. But he wasn't going to take it from him. He's going to send him off with joy and glad. Verse 29. It is in my power of my hand to do evil to you. But the Elohim of your fathers has spoken to me last night, saying, guard yourself, that you do not speak to Yaakov either good or evil. And now you have gone because you greatly long for your father's house, but why did you steal my mighty ones? Yaakov answers right now. And Yaakov answered and said, because I was what? Y'all can say it, it's okay. Afraid. You don't have to be afraid to say afraid. Because I was afraid, for I said, lest you tear your daughters away from me. Now, they go back and forth, and everything turns out to be okay. You know, kind of like the way Yahweh said it was going to be. Then something interesting happens. Chapter 32, 1. And Yaakov went on his way, and the messenger of Elohim met him. The messenger of Elohim met him. This is the third time, y'all. Elohim has come to him in a form 3 different ways. And when Yaakov saw them, he said, this is the camp of Elohim. And he called the name of that place Machanaim. I haven't been met 3 times by Yahweh, have you? Do you think that if you had been, would that strengthen your heart even more than Dad said earlier and warm your heart? You think so? All right. We've got this strong man that Yahweh has chosen to send all the paths of the way that the children of Israel are about to be started through. He gets met 3 times, yet it doesn't seem to work the way to think. I can't say the way Yahweh wanted it to because Yahweh's in charge, but from standing from the outside, it was like it didn't work quite right. Let's see what happens. Verse 32, 3. And Yaakov sent messengers before him to Esau, his brother, in the land of Seir, the field of Edom. And he commanded them, saying, say to my master Esau, your servant Yaakov has said this, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed there until now. And I have bulls and donkeys, flocks, and male and female servants. And I have sent to inform my master to find favor in your eyes. So the messengers returned to Yaakov, saying, we came to your brother Esau, and he also is coming to meet you, and 400 men with him. And Yaakov was greatly afraid and distressed. You think Yaakov's dealing with some adversity right now? You think maybe? Ooh. Is it real? Is it? So he divided the people. We got, and for people on the Skypurgation or that are on YouTube, right now we got a divided room about whether or not it was real or not. It was real. There were 400 people coming at him. But who was Yaakov putting his trust in right now? Not the promise that Yahweh had said. So apparently he had heard that promise, but for some reason there was something missing there that wasn't allowing him to cling to it and hold on to it and believe it like he should have. Otherwise, I believe he would have walked down there with his head up high. Instead, keep it on going in verse 7. So he divided the people that were with him, and the flocks and the herds and the camels into 2 groups. And he said, if Esau comes to the group and attacks it, then the other group which is left shall escape. He was in so much calamity, so much adversity, that he decides to divide up his entire family. He gets them across the river, and now he's sitting there by himself, just livid about what to do. He's contemplating his thoughts. He's wondering what he should do, what he shouldn't do. And something interesting happens. Verse 24. And Yaakov was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of day. And when he saw that he did not overcome him, I want to put some words in here because sometimes this is hard. And when the man saw that he did not overcome Yaakov, he touched the socket of his hip. And the socket of Yaakov's hip was dislocated as he wrestled with him. Now, I'm not adding to and taking away. I just wanted to make sure there's a lot of pronouns right there. And he said to him, let me go, for the day breaks. But Yaakov said, I'm not letting you go until you have blessed me. So he asked him, what is your name? And he said, Yaakov. And he said, your name is no longer called Yaakov, but Yisrael, because you have striven with Elohim and with men, and have overcome. And Yaakov asked him, saying, please let me know your name. And he said, why do you ask me my name? And he blessed him there. And Yaakov called the name of that place Peniel, for I have seen Elohim face to face, and my life was preserved. Some people think that, the beginning of this, whenever he was wrestling, was him wrestling on his inside. I could see you going that way. I don't necessarily believe that, because what happened with him walking with a limp afterwards, unless he decided he was going to start throwing himself up against the tree that was over there. But Yaakov did have some stuff going on inside of him, and it manifested itself out on the outside. And here in a minute, I'm going to give you my interpretation of what may have happened with that. I think Yahweh was looking down on it, and he might have decided he was going to do some stuff. But either way, Yaakov is not trusting in the promises that were given to him by Yahweh. That adversity was overtaking him, and it literally was. It was overtaking him and causing him to be fearful. It was causing him to do all kinds of interesting things, but that wasn't what Yahweh had told him would happen. So let's keep going. And then Esau appears to be glad to see him again. So all that fear that he had was not real. Genesis 33:1. And Yaakov lifted up his eyes and looked and saw Esau coming, and with him 400 men. And he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two female servants. And he put the female servants and their children in front, and Leah and the children behind, and Rachel and Joseph last. And he himself passed over before them and bowed himself to the ground 7 times, until he came near to his brother. And Esau ran up to him, and he embraced him, and he fell on his neck, and he kissed him, and they wept. So he was happy to see him. It was a good thing. That adversity wasn't real, but it was real. It was real inside of his mind and in his heart. And he lifted his eyes, and he saw the women and the children, and he said, who are these with you? And he said, the children with whom Yahweh has favored your servant. Jumping down to 8. Then Esau said, what did you mean by all this company which I met? And here Yaakov goes ahead and says why he did all this. And he said, to find favor in your eyes, my master. Oops, I left something out. I thought he said he was afraid. But anyway, that was the whole thing, was he was trying to get out of that. So what happened here? Why did Yaakov have so much stress? Is that all? I mean, there's different kinds of fears. You know, this was pretty bad. This was really, really bad. But what's interesting was he just had Yahweh talking to him. Not once, not twice, but 3 times Yahweh had come down and said, I'm going to prosper your way. I am with you. I'm not over here. I am with you. He told him at the beginning, I will not leave you until all this is taken care of. He heard it, but did he really believe it? He had Yahweh talking to him. He had messengers showing up, and he had been blessed left and right. He heard what Yahweh said, but he did not believe it. Did he know it to be true? Towards the end of his life, Yaakov said something that's very interesting. Let's jump over to Genesis 47:7. He wasn't taking account of the things that were going good. He started focusing on only the bad things that were happening. And that was robbing him of a whole lot, I believe. Not only was it robbing him of peace, it was, well, you'll see. Genesis 47:7. And Joseph brought in his father Yaakov and set him before Pharaoh. And Yaakov blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Yaakov, how old are you? And Yaakov said to Pharaoh, the days of the years of my sojourning are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not reached the days of the years of the life of my father in their days of their sojournings. Now, I don't know of anybody else talking about their life ending like this before. But Yaakov had a lot of stuff go on. I mean, he really did. He had family turmoil that was inside the family. He had the stuff happen to Dinah. That wasn't good. He had the stuff happening with Esau. That wasn't good. He had people try to do all kinds of different things. So he had a lot of things go on with him. But for whatever reason, while that stuff was going on, he couldn't see the blessings that Yahweh had proclaimed to him to begin with. Why was that? Yaakov did have distress in his home life as well as at his work life. I think he chose to make them more miserable than he had to. You see, he had Yahweh talking to him, telling him how not to be afraid and how Yahweh would be with him. Yet he did not cling to that promise during these times of adversity. Instead, he relied on his own understanding, got fearful, and allowed that to steal the comfort that Yahweh had extended to him in the form of promises. Can you relate to that? I know I can. Yahweh's given us a bunch of promises that are written down. And a lot of times I will lean on my own understanding when adversity gets to me. And not so easy to be around, am I, Ashley? She said no comment. Now, what I'm about to say is supposition, because what I'm going to tell you is why I think Yahweh came down and sent a messenger down to wrestle with Yaakov. So he just got through talking to him, and Yaakov was down there acting all kinds of bent out of shape about what's about to happen with Esau. I think he sent a messenger down there to thump him on the head and get his attention again. Now, it didn't come in the thump of a head. He wrestled around with him for a little while and thumped him on the hip instead. But he gave him that thing to be able to remember from there on out that, hey, you need to follow me. And so that little bit of pain was to say, hey, this is what it feels like when you don't trust in me. Things get a lot better for him thereafter. He does have the Dinah. I can't remember if the Dinah thing happens thereafter. Yeah, it does. And he also has some stuff happen with Joseph. But life does get a little bit better. But if he had dwelt on what Yahweh had promised as opposed to what was happening along the way of the promise, I don't think he would have ended his life by saying, few and evil have been my days. Yaakov listened to Yahweh, but his actions showed that he didn't fully believe Yahweh. That's stout, isn't it? He believed in it, but he, for whatever reason, was missing something to be able to let that peace get on top of him. And because of that, he became fearful, emotional, and he endured a lot more distress during his times of adversity than he needed to. So is there another way? Let's look at somebody that did do it a little bit different. Let's look at Joseph. Because Joseph's a guy that endured a lot of adversity, wouldn't you say? All right, we're going to go back to 37. And it's going to be the same thing because we're going to run through his whole story. We're going to start on verse 5, and that's going to be on page 40. Poor Joseph. His adversity started when he was a little boy. Or not a little boy, when he was younger. Verse 2. This is the genealogy of Yaakov. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flocks of his brothers. And the young man was with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought an evil report of them to his father. And Yisrael loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age. And he made him a long robe. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all of his brothers, they hated him and were not able to speak peaceably to him. Bless his heart. I mean, seriously. All right, so this is, his whole world is made up in this family. You know, they're not going out and going to public school or anything like that. Everything's homeschooled in this unit, in this clan. And all of his brothers can't even speak peacefully to him because of how upset they are with him. All right? Would you say that's kind of adversity? That's happening in the home, and that's something that's going to be long-lasting. Can you imagine what it would be like to be like that? To be ostracized like that? All right? And we can go back and forth. Did he cause it to come on his own head? Was it unfounded? There are arguments for both sides of it. The point is that it's still happening to him. Adversity started early. Let's go on to verse 5. Things get worse. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brothers. So they hated him even more. Bless his heart. And he said to them, please listen to this dream which I have dreamed. See, we were building sheaves in the midst of the field, and see, my sheaf rose up and also stood up, and see, your sheaves stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf. And his brothers said to him, shall you indeed reign over us? Shall you indeed rule over us? So they hated him even more for his dream and for his words. All right, so I like to think the best of Joseph in this situation. Some people think he might have came in there and said, hey, y'all want to hear what I just dreamed? You know, and got on him like that. It may have been that way. Dude, man, I just had this strange dream. And we don't know that he knew the interpretation of it. They may have been the ones that interpreted it that way and went. So there's two sides to that. The next one could be taken, well, we'll read it. Verse 9. And he dreamed still another dream and related it to his brothers and said, see, I have dreamed another dream, and see, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars bowed down to me. And he related it to his father and his brothers. And his father rebuked him and said to him, What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall we, your mother and I and your brothers, indeed come to bow down to the earth before you? And his brothers envied him, but his father guarded the word. The reason why I think this may not be him being haughty per se is right there where it says his father guarded the word. That's the same word, shamar, that is used for guarding the commands. Something about this was important enough that they wrote down that Yaakov was willing to guard that this was going to happen. So something was there, more than just haughtiness. So anyway, the word shamar means properly to hedge about, that is guard, generally to protect, things like that. But it's the same words used for guard the commands. All right. So in Joseph's life, things were not great at all. And it's even going to get even worse. Verse 18. And they saw him from a distance, and before he came near them, they plotted against him to kill him. Y'all, this is some bad family stuff. And they said to each other, See, this master of dreams is coming. Now then, come, and let us kill him and throw him into some pit, and we shall say some wild beast has devoured him. Let us then see what comes of his dreams. And Rehoboam heard and rescued him from their hand and said, Let us not take his life. And Rehoboam said to them, Shed no blood. Throw him into a pit which is in the wilderness, and do not lay a hand on him, in order to rescue him out of their hands and bring him back to his father. So it came to be when Joseph had come to his brothers that they stripped Joseph of his robe, the long robe which was on him, and they took him and threw him into a pit. And the pit was empty. There was no water in it. And they sat down to eat a meal, and they lifted their eyes and looked and saw a company of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with their camels, bearing spices and balm and myrrh, going to take them down to the Mitzrites. And Yehudah said to his brothers, What will we gain if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our flesh. His brother said, Yeah, man, that's a good idea. And Midianite traders passed by, so they pulled Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And they took Joseph to Mitzrayim. And then the last verse in that chapter says the Midianites sold him to Potiphar, the officer of Pharaoh, who's the captain of the guard. So things just got very adverse for Joseph. All right, this isn't going to be an instant thing. This isn't going to be a short-term thing. This is a long-term thing. He just got uprooted from his entire family, everything that he knows, and is now going to be a slave in a foreign country. What do you think's going on in his mind right now? Is he excited? No? Do you think he's clinging to Yahweh's promises? Well, something that's interesting is Yahweh doesn't come necessarily talk to him that we know of. But something is different about this, because even though Joseph gets put in this horrible situation with all these things that are outside of his control, he still keeps moving forward. He still keeps doing what it is that Yahweh would have him to do, so much so that he outshines everybody that's around him in every situation that he gets into. All right? Let's go over to 39:2. And it came to be that Yahweh was with Joseph, and he became a prosperous man. It was in the house of his master, the Mitzrite. And his master saw that Yahweh was with him, and that Yahweh made all that he did to prosper in his hand. So Joseph found favor in his eyes and served him, and he appointed him over his house and gave it into his hand that he had. And it came to be, from the time that he appointed him over his house and all that he had, that Yahweh blessed the Mitzrite because of Joseph's sake. And the blessing of Yahweh was on all that he had in the house and in the field. And he left in Joseph's hand all that he had. And he did not know what he had except for the bread which he ate. And Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. So it looks like things are moving up for him, right? It's getting a little bit better. Verse 7, and after these events it came to be that his master's wife lifted up his eyes to Joseph and said, Lie with me. This ain't good, y'all. Man, bless his heart. One thing right after the other. But even in this circumstance, what did Joseph say? Verse 9, No one is greater in this house than I, and he has not withheld whatever from me but you. But you are his wife. And how should I do this great evil and sin against my what? He didn't say my master. He didn't say my slaveholder. He said my Elohim. Even in this situation, when all this has been taken from him, he made a conscious choice to go out and serve Yahweh, not his own flesh. All right? And I think that was one of the reasons why Yahweh began to prosper him, or had already been prospering him, because he was continuing to let the fruits of his labor show in the fruits of his faith. We all know what happens next. Verse 20, that woman come over and she just started whipping up everybody and telling everybody all this, that, and the other. And next thing you know, Joseph's in prison. Verse 20, then Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the sovereign's prisoners were confined. And he was in the prison. He was there in prison. But even while he was in prison, Yahweh was still with him. 21. But Yahweh was with Joseph and extended kindness to him, and he gave him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. And the prison warden gave into the hand of Joseph all the prisoners who were in the prison, and whatever was done was his doing. The prison warden did not look into any point that was under Joseph's hand, because Yahweh was with him. And whatever he did, Yahweh made it to prosper. Do you think that Joseph recognized that Yahweh was with him as this was going on? I mean, because this is a strange circumstance. I see some heads bobbing. But, I mean, like, uprooted from everything you know, sold into slavery, accused of something that's horrendous, that's worthy of death, and things just keep happening one right after the other. Do you think he had the wherewithal? He's not very old right now. He's about Lucas's age, truthfully. And he's sitting there and he's got the wherewithal. Does he have the wherewithal to realize that all this is going on, but Yahweh is still with me? Do y'all think that's the case? I hope so. I mean, it is marvelous if it is. Where did he get that knowledge from if that's the case? Because we don't see Yahweh coming down and meeting with him out there and saying, I am with you. Do not be afraid. I'm going to do all this for you. Impressed in his spirit. His daddy may have told him about it and told him the stories, and he was able to cling to those promises because this was for you and your seed, so he may have gotten it there. But either way, as he goes through this, he continues to prosper. We do not see Yahweh coming to him directly to tell him not to be afraid like we saw with Yaakov, but he keeps soldiering on as if he has hope. He's in a dungeon now, y'all. Why is that? Maybe Yahweh didn't think that the tactic worked about coming down and meeting with him beforehand. Maybe he thought, you need to live it through your family to be able to see and see if that takes root better. I don't know. That's supposition. Yahweh knows better than I do. Or maybe he was visited. Maybe he did come to him and visited him dreams, because he's already had dreams. And those dreams are so impressive that when his brothers come back nearly 40 years later, I think it's 40 years, 17, 13, 20. No, it's 22 years later. So 22 years later, he's remembering these dreams. He may have done it that way. We don't know, but whatever it was, something was inside of him that allowed him to be able to hear the promise and then cling to it in order to get through his adversity. Next, chapter 40, verse 1. And after these events, it came to be that the cupbearer and the baker of the sovereign of Mitzrayim sinned against their master, the sovereign of Mitzrayim. Now, Joseph goes and he listens to the dreams and he goes ahead and interprets them, and they seem like good interpretations. But at the end of it, he pleads with the cupbearer who's going to make it out. Please, please be with me. Verse 14. But remember me when it is well with you, and please show kindness to me, and mention me to Pharaoh, and get me out of this house. For truly I was stolen away from the land of the Hebrews, and I have done naught that they should put me in this dungeon. Y'all, he's desperate. That adversity has been plaguing him. So that's why I don't know if he could really feel that Yahweh was with him. He's desperate. He's in a dungeon. He's done naught to deserve all this. But even during all this, he doesn't lose sight of who Yahweh is or who gets the esteem during situations. Let's go to 40:23. Oh, wait. 40:23 says that the cupbearer did not remember him, but he forgot Joseph. That is so sad to me. It took a full 2 years before the cupbearer remembered, hey, I need to talk about Joseph. Genesis 41:1. And it came to be at the end of 2 years' time that Pharaoh had a dream and saw him standing by the river. Even through all this, though, even waiting another time, Joseph might have been ready. He's like, dude, this is my opportunity. I got to play in. This is going to be a way for me to get out of here. But he had to wait on Yahweh's time. It was not on his time. That's something that happens with adversity. We may think that we're about to the end of it and something else happens, and it's not our time. It's Yahweh's time. That's a hard one to get your head wrapped around. That is a real hard one to get your head wrapped around. Through all this, when it came time to stand before the king who would free him, Joseph did not turn to fear or try to take credit for the interpretations of this, but instead, he gave the esteem to Yahweh. 41:15. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream. I have dreamed a dream, and there is no one to interpret it. Now I myself have heard it said of you that you understand a dream to interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh and said, It's not in me. Let Elohim answer Pharaoh, and with peace. This, of course, is when we get to have our happy ending. So Joseph is given his freedom. He's promoted to second in the kingdom and given a family just like that. Can you imagine the overwhelming emotion that happened that day? I mean, to go from I was in the dungeon, they pulled me out, shaved me, put me in front of the dude. Next thing you know, I got a robe on and I got all this stuff. That had to be a whirlwind of emotion. And I think when adversity finally ends, you can oftentimes find yourself in that. I know when we've had things happen that were ongoing and long, when it came down to the end of it, you just cry and you're not even sure why. And guys aren't supposed to cry, but we do. And so that's the kinds of things that happen. All right, it's going to be 37 until 45, chapter 41. And the word was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and the eyes of all his servants. Oh, this is just telling how everything got great. And Pharaoh said to his servants, Could we find another like him, a man in whose the spirit of Elohim? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, Since Elohim has shown you all this, there is no one as discerning and wise as you. Be over my house, you yourself, and at your mouth all my people shall kiss. Only in the throne am I greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, See, I have set you over all the land of Mitzrayim. And Pharaoh took his seal ring off his hand and put it on Joseph's hand. And he dressed him in his garments of fine linen and put gold chains around his neck. And he had him ride on the second chariot which was in his hand. And he cried out before him, Bow the knee, and set him over all the land. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without a word from you let no man lift his hand or foot in all of the land of Mitzrayim. And Pharaoh called Joseph Zaphnath-Paneach, and he gave him a wife, Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. And Joseph went out over all the land of Mitzrayim. Y'all, in verse 46, we find out that Joseph was 30 years old. That means when he stood before Pharaoh. Verse 46. Now Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, sovereign of Mitzrayim. That means that he endured this adversity for 13 years. 13 years of solitude. 13 years of slavery. 13 years of imprisonment. All right? Is that a short-term adversity? That's a pretty long-term adversity. That is a long time to be sitting there letting fear well up inside of you, doubt to be inside of you, all kinds of things that could cause you to do all kinds of interesting things. But what made Joseph very different from all the rest of them was, or at least from Yaakov's sense, is that he didn't let that fear mess with his actions. When it came time to act, he acted righteously as opposed to out of fear. And that's something that I would suggest, given some thought, is when fear does attack you in adversity, how can you act and act well versus acting out of fear? Very good thing. 13 years is a long time, but in the end he was able to see that Yahweh had planned this for him and that he was part of a bigger purpose than himself. That's a pretty big deal to do after going through 13 years of that. One that had him better and made a big difference in the world. Genesis 45:3. And Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers were unable to answer him, for they trembled before him. Then Joseph said to his brothers, Please come near to me. And when they came near, he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold in Mitzrayim. And now, do not be grieved or displeased with yourself because you sold me here. For Elohim sent me before you to preserve life. What kind of realization would that be? All your plight, everything you did was for the good of lots of people. That had to be freeing in some regards. Verse 6. For 2 years now the scarcity of food has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there is neither plowing nor harvesting. And Elohim sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant in the earth, and to give life to you by great escape. So then, you did not send me here, but Elohim. And he has sent me for a father to Pharaoh, a master of his house, and a ruler through all the land of Mitzrayim. I got something to say about that here in just a minute, but let me keep going. That way I don't lose my spot. But even after all this, even after them realizing that Joseph was sent there to be able to do great for them, the boys tried to allow fear to creep back in. Turn over to 50:15. And when Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, What if Joseph hates us and pays us back for all the evil which we did? That's pretty fearful. And they sent word to Joseph, saying, Before your father died, he commanded, say, This is what you are to say to Joseph. I beg you, please forgive the transgressions of your brother and their sin, for they did evil to you. And now, Please forgive the transgression of the servants of the Elohim of your father. And that upset Joseph. He started crying over it. And his brothers also went and fell down before his face and said, see, we are your servants. But Joseph stood up and said, no, that's fear-based. We're not going to do that. He said, do not fear, for am I in the place of Elohim? And you intended evil against me, but Elohim intended it for good, in order to do it as it is this day, to keep a great many people alive. And now, do not fear. I provide for you and your little ones. So he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. And Joseph dwelt in Mitzrayim, he and his father's household. And Joseph lived 110 years. And it don't say few and evil were the days of his life. So what was the difference between the two? We've talked about some of them, but the whole time, Joseph would shut out fear, it seems, even all the way to here. He would trust in Yahweh. He would cling to the promises that Yahweh had given him, as opposed to allowing fear come in and cloud his judgment, affect his life, and allow him to not see the perspective that was there. Sometimes calamity befalls us. Sometimes adversity befalls us. Sometimes it's of our own doing, and when it's of our own doing, you do like Eli says, use Yahweh. You get to deal with the punishment. Sometimes things just happen and you're not sure why. It may be that when those things are happening and it seems prolonged, Yahweh is getting you ready for something bigger and better than you're even aware of. He's using you for a piece of his plan and not your own. 13 years was a long time to be in prison. I'm sure Joseph had to battle fear. He had doubt, resentment. And to my knowledge, I don't know where Yahweh says you will not have to battle those things when you're going through adversity. But he tells us repeatedly not to be afraid. But he didn't say that will come easy. Battling fear and not being afraid are not the same thing. I want you to think about Yahshua. While he was sitting in Gethsemane, he's over there crying tears. He's so worried about it. But he didn't allow that fear to keep him from doing what he needed to do. It didn't submit him into inaction. So when adversity is before you, fear is going to come, but it's your job to master it, not let it rule you. Joseph was able to overcome and see the big picture and Yahweh's purpose. Even without it being written that Yahweh had told Joseph that Even without it being written that Yahweh had told Joseph he would be with him and not be afraid. So Yahweh never came down and told him that we know of, other than he was clinging to it from Yaakov maybe. We all go through adversities. Sometimes it's our own making. We already talked about that. However, sometimes adversity strikes us from something that is not of our own doing. And I wonder if those times Yahweh is preparing us to be greater. If that's the case, it is of the utmost importance that we do not act in fear during those situations, that we trust in the promises of Yahweh that he has given us, and that we realize we are part of his plan. My mom and dad got me something cool one time. It's this picture. This is hand-drawn, by the way. All right? It says down here it's got a huge Goliath over here. And it's got a little bitty David. But it says, if Yahweh puts a giant in front of you, it's because he sees a David inside of you. When adversity strikes and you're not sure why and it seems prolonged, take comfort in knowing that that probably means you're part of something that Yahweh has. Something bigger, something stronger, something that makes history even. And at least let that be something that does comfort you through it. Some of the verses that will help as you're going through this, as you're battling the fear, as you're battling all the different things that are associated with adversity, I'd like to share with you. They're just a couple that I like and that I read regularly. Let's turn over to Proverbs 3:5. I'll probably quote that one. It's going to be on page 729. I'm going to read 5 through 8. Trust in Yahweh with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Know him in all your ways and he makes all your paths straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear Yahweh and turn away from evil. It is healing to your navel and moistening to your bones. When you know Yahweh and his ways, he allows you to be able to only fear him and not succumb to the fear of other things. Speaking of fear, I told you that Yahweh's told us not to be afraid. Let's turn over to Joshua, chapter 1. That'll be on page 224. We're going to be in verse 6. Be strong and courageous, for you are to let the people inherit the land which I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, and guard to do according to all the Torah which Moshe my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it right or left, so that you act wisely whenever you go. Do not let the book of this Torah depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you guard to do according to all that is written in it. For then you shall make your way prosperous and act wisely. Next one, jump over to Jeremiah 29. See, we have promises that are written out to us, and we can read them over in Deuteronomy. But in order to gain those promises, we are supposed to be doing what we're supposed to. You know what they said, if you do what you're supposed to, then things will work out. Just like this right here. But it says at the beginning of it, if you obey Yahweh. And as we saw, that's what Joseph did. He had opportunity to cling to his flesh, but instead he clinged to his Elohim. And because of that, he was prospered still. But Yahweh says, through those promises, how he will bless your household. How he will bless everything that is about you. But I really like the way that he says it right here in Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I am planning for you, declares Yahweh. Plans of peace and not evil, to give you a future and an expectancy. Then you shall call on me, and shall come and pray to me, and I shall listen to you, and you shall seek me, and shall find me, when you search for me with all your heart, and I shall be found by you, declares Yahweh, and I shall turn back your captivity. I bet Joseph would like to heard that one. And shall gather you from all the Gentiles and from the places where I have driven you, declares Yahweh. And I shall bring you back to the place which I have exiled you. Whenever you're going through adversity, whenever it's long-lived, 13 years, that sounds like so long. Yahweh has plans for you, for good, not evil. Even while the evil is going on, even while the bad stuff is going on, if you cling to Him, He will get you through it. I saw something real cool on Facebook the other day, and I'm going to conclude with this. But it had to do with a verse and somebody's interpretation of it. Because what happens is as we're dealing with adversity, when we see all this stuff going on, it's easy for that fear to creep in. And would y'all agree that fear is everywhere right now? Oh my goodness, I haven't seen people eat up like I have right now. I mean, they're scared about sicknesses, they're scared about elections, they're scared about famines, they're scared about wars, they're just scared. And it's everywhere out there. It has a little Post-it note on it, and it says Isaiah 43. So y'all go ahead and turn over to Isaiah 43 because we're going to read verses 1 through 5. But the little Post-it note says, ships don't sink because of the water around them. Ships sink because of the water that gets into them. Don't let what's happening around you get inside you and weigh you down. And they wrote down Isaiah 43:2. We're going to start in 1 though. But now, thus said Yahweh, your Creator, O Yaakov, and He who formed you, O Yisrael, do not fear, for I have redeemed you. That should be comforting. I have called you by name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, I am with you, and through the rivers, they do not overflow you. When you walk through fire, you are not scorched, and a flame does not burn you. In other words, you're protected. For I am Yahweh, your Elohim, the set-apart one of Israel, your Savior. I gave Mitzrayim for your ransom, Cush and Sheba in your place. Since you were precious in my eyes. You hear that? You are precious in His eyes. You have been esteemed, and I have loved you. I give men in your place and peoples for your life. Do not fear, for I am with you. If you're going through adversities, cling to this. Yahweh is with you. Do not fear. Do not let that get inside of you. Do not let that dictate how you act and what you do. Know that Yahweh is with you and He loves you, and you're precious in His eyes. Yevrekeka Yahweh v'yishmereka, Yair Yahweh panav aleka v'kineka, Yisai Yahweh panav aleka v'yasem l'cha shalom. Yahweh bless you and guard you. Yahweh make His face to shine upon you and show favor to you. Yahweh lift up His face upon you and give you perfect and complete peace.
Hey, hey, and He can make a way. Hey, hey, so humble yourselves and pray. guard his Torah. Obey each day, hallelujah.